This video is sponsored by Hunt a Killer. So it goes without saying that Halloween is definitely going to be different this year, and in case you're worrying about how to have both a safe and fun time, then I'd like to suggest Hunt a Killer. This is a brand that I personally reached out to partner with, and my favorite thing about Hunt a Killer subscription boxes is that they're like a highly detailed escape room delivered right to your door. Each box is a single episode in a wider narrative, containing clues and puzzles that will carry you throughout the story. It's great by yourself or even with friends, but for those of you who maybe can't meet up for spooky season in person, you can even share clues and play together via video chat. And on top of all this, part of the proceeds from each box is actually donated to the Cold Case Foundation, an organization dedicated to solving real-life cold cases. Head on over to huntakiller.com/Raimbot to get 20% off your first box today with promo code Raimbot. Again, that's huntakiller.com/Raimbot and promo code Raimbot. Thanks again to Hunt a Killer for making this video possible, and with all that said, let's begin. The intersection of Courtney Street and 13th Avenue in Saskatchewan, Canada is unremarkable to say the very least. It's flat and mostly barren aside from some signs and an adjacent set of railroad tracks that, on occasion, guide massive freight trains throughout the area. On July 28, 1995, however, tragedy would fall upon this otherwise unassuming stretch of land. Just as always, a freight train was making its way towards the intersection, and off in the distance, two employees spotted what looked like a man emerging from a nearby ditch. Just a split second later, said man had deliberately dove into the path of the oncoming train. By that point, it was much too close to stop in time. The employees could not save the man's life, and he was killed instantly upon impact. Police arrived on the scene shortly thereafter, and based on witness accounts and the positioning of the body, there was no question that this man had chosen to end his own life. But the question at this point was, who exactly was he? Police had been trying for literal decades at this point to reunite John Doe with his family, but to no avail. No form of identification was found on the body, and no one ever came forward claiming to be a relative or loved one. All there was to go by was what the man looked like, what he was wearing, and what he had with him that day. The victim is described as a white male, somewhere between the ages of 20 and 30. He weighed approximately 140 to 160 pounds and had short, dark hair and blue eyes. At the time of his death, John Doe wore a black denim jacket with a gold crown logo, along with a white shirt underneath that read Boca Authentic. He also wore blue faded jeans, white socks, and a pair of oversized blue and white Reebok runners. Before John Doe took his own life, it was noted that he could be seen placing some kind of bag or backpack on the ground nearby, and when said backpack was searched, it was said to contain extra clothing and various personal items, but nothing that actually offered any clues as to the man's identity. The last item of note here was a small silver-colored brooch in the shape of a rose. This is perhaps the most interesting clue for reasons we'll get into shortly. According to local law enforcement, this is pretty much all they had to work with. The man had no tattoos, no scars aside from a few on his wrists, and as far as they knew, his fingerprints weren't in any systems across Canada or the US. X-rays were taken, photographs spread through the media, and DNA even taken, but in the end, no one could identify this John Doe. That is, except for one man, a hitchhiker named Randy Wakelin who supposedly met John Doe just days before his death. The two men had struck up a conversation and, for a short time, even traveled together. According to Randy, the man he met introduced himself as Dave, but didn't seem to provide a last name. Keep in mind, Randy was a total stranger, so Dave might not even be his real name. Nonetheless, Dave was described by Randy as sort of a preppy type who wasn't very street smart, although he was well-mannered. At one point in passing, Dave was noted as saying something about going, quote, back east. And to top this off, Randy even stated that he saw John Doe with an Ontario birth certificate. He supposedly wouldn't talk about his family and was said to have recently broken up with his partner, a woman by the name of Kathy. Dave's last words, according to Randy, were, "I'm sick of everybody." The most notable detail out of Randy's statements was that he claimed to have noticed Dave wearing a small rose brooch, much like the one found in John Doe's pocket. Now, this would almost certainly prove that Dave and Doe were the same person, but whether or not that's true is still up for debate. This detail regarding the brooch being mentioned by Randy was reported in 2005 by the CBC, a Canadian public broadcast network. In that same article, they mentioned that police had already released full transcripts of their interview with Randy, transcripts that were once available online but have since vanished. The main available source that challenges Randy's reliability is a 2013 book by the name of Boiling Point in Cold Cases, written by local journalist Barb Pacholik. Within it, Barb claims that Randy had accidentally misidentified John Doe, although she doesn't specify why or how she came to this conclusion. The rose brooch is brought up once again, but there is no mention of Randy ever claiming to have seen it on Dave or whoever it was he met while traveling. So this comes down to who you want to believe. By all accounts, both are supposed to be pretty reliable sources, and both seem to have talked to the police directly, although it is possible that the case of mistaken identity was uncovered much later, since Barb's book came out almost a decade after the CBC's coverage. Regardless of this discrepancy, though, John Doe still hasn't truly been identified. In the end, he was laid to rest by a group of local strangers who had heard about his story, and of course, they were the only ones in attendance. No family, no friends, nothing. John Doe's suicide in itself was tragic, and we might never know what drove him to end his own life, but what's equally tragic here is the idea that either no one cared enough to go looking for Doe, or maybe he didn't have anyone left to begin with. If you think you know who John Doe is, although it might be a long shot, then you can contact local police at 306-777-6500. Hey guys, so I know that this video is a little bit shorter than usual. The other two this month are probably also going to be a little bit shorter, but once November comes, things should be back to normal. I've been a little bit under the weather lately, and my voice is kind of messed up right now. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and let's get right to thanking the patrons. T. Gorman, Connor H., Base of Shadow, Way Hayes, Ronnie, TBF, Saul A., Michelle G., Gal Forel, Chris M., Corey Barks, David G., Catherine L., Astro, Tyler T., Bloody the Elf, Andrew L., Esper Nix, Sean L., Eric M., Brandon F., Daniel G., AJ Runaway, Corey W., Lance Ulysses, Mr. Gamer BBQ, Zimbledorf, The Calzone Consumer, Johan P., Othian, Rye S., Guilty Pleasures, Tristan J., Francisco B., Jake J., Skygrinder, It's Mitt, YOLO for Jesus, Luck Brown, Scorian S., Benjamin M., Nick B., Melody, AJ M., SPC Zippo, Keith Z., Math J., James M., Zerai, and Joel H. Once again, thank you guys so much for your support, and that also goes out to the $5 tier over here, and with all that said, I'll see you guys soon.